I want to just recognize Dean Jana Swartz, who's our Dean of Student Success and Pathways Initiatives. This was her inspiration, and then it has just taken a life of its own. Andrea has done a phenomenal job really putting all of these together. So today we're going to have Andrew Caldwell, Meteorites, Old Rocks and New Discoveries. Any of you are his students?
Yeah!
My best student.
And Marla Manchego, from stumbling blocks to building blocks, using obstacles to build resilience and persistence. So that's for today. And look, there's some, things to look at. The next talks are Thursday, November 30th, same time. Our president's going to be doing What Matters to Him talk. So far, it's to be determined on what matters to him the most. He's really having a hard time deciding because, we matter to him the most. And then Ray Alberly is going to be speaking on understanding and connecting to land, and he's one of our faculty members. So thank you very much. And as you hear Andy today and Marla, think about what matters most to you. And if you would like to be part of these talks, we'd love to have you.
So Marla and I have been laughing about 12 to 15 minutes. This may be an amazing record. Hi, Tanae. Trying to get this done. But let me ask a quick question. Why do you think I like meteorites? There's two things I like about meteorites. What are they? They're rocks, and they're from? Space. What's cooler than that? The only thing that'd be cooler than that would be like if dinosaurs came from space. That would be the only thing better. But these are rocks from space, and this is what really got me into meteorites is being able to hold something and know that this was in space for actually a very long time. These are also older than any rock on Earth. These are older than any rock you'll ever find on the surface of the Earth. Oh, that's not going to work. Okay, so either that's fine. You can be the clicker. That'll work. It just yeah, weird.
If you can check on the screen. Oh, you made it big.
Yeah, there it goes back. Okay, and now there it goes. Okay, so in the 12 to 15 minutes that we have, or 11 to 15 now, I want to cover a variety of things. Meteorite terms and the types of meteorite searches, and the big thing is why they're significant, and that's really what matters to me is the significance of these. And so these two terms are frequently used interchangeably. People go out and they see a streak of light in the sky and they say, I saw a meteor. And they're right. The light you see going across the sky is the meteor. When these things go across the sky, you're seeing them anywhere between 60 and 100 miles above the surface most of the time. You're not going to see a little black rock 60 to 100 miles away at night. But you will see the light that it produces as it goes across the sky. The meteorite is whatever's left, the piece that survives its fall to Earth, that there's something physical left behind by that rock. Not all of it blew up in the atmosphere. So a big question for centuries has been, where do meteorites come from? And that was a point of contention. The name meteorite literally means air stone. And some early scientists thought, well, if hailstones can come from thunderstorms, maybe rocks can come from thunderstorms. And meteorites, they come from asteroids. These are asteroid parent planets, they're called. And he says, don't worry, dear, a few more times around the sun and she'll lose interest in him. Because see, he's a comet, so he's melting. I love that one. All right, go ahead and hit the next one. So history, go ahead and click through this. So the first recorded fall was in 1492 in Eisenheim, France. It was part of Germany at the time, and this was a woodcut of the event, and people witnessed it, thought of it as a sign of God's wrath, that we had displeased God. But go ahead and hit the next one. And even Thomas Jefferson, who was known for his open mind and his progressive thinking, did not believe that these came from space. And he said, I would more easily believe that two Yankee professors would lie, that stones would fall from heaven. So he was a skeptic when it came to meteorites actually coming from space. All right, and I talked about airstone. Yeah, go ahead. So 1794 was really the first meteoriticist, and go ahead and hit that. And Ernest Friedrich Chladni, I don't know. But anyway, he classified meteorites, and not all meteorites are the same. There are essentially two end members. This is an iron meteorite, this is a stony meteorite, and about 80% of all falls are stony, about 5% are irons, and they come down, and he was the first one to propose that maybe these are pieces of asteroids. Asteroids had just been discovered about that same time, and looking at the angle that they come into our atmosphere, he said, hey, maybe these things come from asteroids. So he's a meteoriticist, not a meteorologist. That's somebody who studies weather, so not the same thing. All right, cool. So in 1905, Daniel Behringer, he was an iron tycoon from Philadelphia, and he was interested in Meteor Crater, Arizona. How many of you have been to Meteor Crater? Is anybody in here been there? Just a couple of you have. It is the best tourist trap in the world. It's 30 miles east of Flagstaff. You get off I-40, you pay like $15 to go see a hole in the ground. They got the hot dogs on the little rollers, you know. It's just, it's great. Good kitsch. But anyway, 1905, Daniel Behringer decided that maybe a meteorite had actually fallen in and buried itself below the surface, and this would be an excellent source of iron for him to build railroads and buildings and all kinds of stuff from. Go ahead and hit that. One more. And so, yeah, he was looking for a source of iron, and there we go. And he felt the main mass would be beneath the crater. Go ahead and hit that again. Oh, yeah, and it's still privately owned. It's not a national park. It's not a public property. It's a privately owned crater. It's still owned by his family today. All right. So in the 1930s, this man, Harvey Harlow Nininger, was a meteorology professor from Kansas, and he was fascinated by meteorites. And he traveled, go ahead and click through that, he traveled through North America. He went up to Canada, down to Mexico. He was kind of an Indiana Jones-like character. He would go along and he would talk to people about meteorites, and he would purchase them, and then he would cut them and keep a small piece to study and then sell the rest, and that's how he made his living. And it was not unusual for him to go to like a church social or you know, go to a town picnic or something and start talking about meteorites, and people would be like, oh yeah, I got one of those in my barn, and they'd bring them out and he'd give them a few bucks, and during the Great Depression that was pretty big. So in the 1930s, he went to Meteor Crater and he started collecting meteorites around there. And one of his students designed this car. This is an electromagnet hanging off the back of the car, and they would drive the fields around Meteor Crater, and these little pieces of iron would jump up and stick to the back. Just ingenuity is just amazing. And what Nininger discovered was that there wasn't a big massive meteorite under the crater. That what really happened is when the asteroid hit about 50,000 years ago, it exploded and fragments went everywhere. This is one of them. This is from Meteor Crater, and these fragments went flying in every direction. It actually would have created an iron vapor cloud. It would have been thousands of degrees and would have basically rained molten iron onto the surface. Not a fun day, but nevertheless, that was what happened. So he collected meteorites for years. Go ahead and hit the next one. Yeah, I talked about this. And so in 1946, he built a museum on the flanks of Meteor Crater called the American Meteorite Museum. And this was along historic Route 66. And then when I-40 was built, just a few hundred yards to the south, none of the traffic went to his Meteorite Museum. So he moved his museum to Sedona, Arizona. And it lasted just a few years there. So go ahead and click the next thing. There's the ruins of the original one. He moved then to Denver, and what was at the time called the Colorado Museum of Natural History, now Denver Museum of Nature and Science, hired him as their curator of meteorites. And so he started a family here. Go ahead and and hit those. He formed a private company called the American Meteorite Laboratory, where he both studied meteorites and sold meteorites to make a living. He married a woman named Addie. My daughter's name is Addie, partially for this reason. And then they had a daughter, Margaret. And Margaret traveled with him all over collecting meteorites. And she married a man named Glenn Huss, and they continued the family business in Denver, and then they had 2 children. Gary Huss is now a meteoriticist at UCLA, and Peggy Schaller runs the American Meteorite Laboratory out of her garage in Denver and still works with the Denver Museum of Nature and Science cutting meteorites. So there's a whole Colorado connection here to one of the premier people who went after meteorites. All right, meteorites come in 2 varieties. Primitive and processed. Primitive means it's basically the same way it was when it formed in the solar system. When all our planets were forming, there were a few rocks left over, and these are still the same way. Processed means something has happened to them. The original object that they made melted, iron sank to the core, the mantle and crust formed. They could have been formed from lava, but something has melted them since their original formation. So primitive meteorites, I want to pass around a few of these. There we go. These are considered primitive meteorites. They're all stony meteorites. This one is one that was found in China. Even though it's called a stony, it still has quite a bit of iron in it. That's what's staining it. I'll pass that around. And then you can see the outside of it is covered in a black glassy crust, and that's from its passage through the atmosphere. And these are all stony meteorites, all different kinds. This black one in the middle is kind of a special one. It's called a carbonaceous chondrite, and it has carbon in it. Why would we be excited about carbon in a meteorite? Life. All life on Earth is based on carbon, and maybe that's where the carbon came from. Who knows? But it's an interesting thought. So these are some stony meteorites, mostly slices of them. All right, go ahead and hit the next one. All right. There are some meteorites that come from the Moon and Mars. They're very, very rare. The way we know they're from the Moon and Mars is they're a little bit younger. Almost all meteorites date back about 4.5 billion years, and these are a little bit younger. The ones from Mars also have trapped atmospheric gases in them that match the Martian atmosphere. And so it's a cheap but slow way to get rocks from the Moon and Mars. We don't have to send somebody to go get them. They come to us. All right, go ahead and hit the next one. All right, processed meteorites are ones like these irons. These are meteorites that are from a broken core of an asteroid. There's a lot of different varieties. You often see these in rock shops and gem and mineral shows and places like this. This one on the right is called Gibeon. It's from Namibia, Africa, and it has a cool pattern to it. It's called a Wiedemannsstatten pattern, and it's how the iron and nickel crystallize, and they often carve this into little shapes, sometimes little planets, eggs. I have a watch at home that the battery's dead, but it's got a watch face of that iron meteorite on it, so we'll pass those around. And then some of my favorites are these. These are called the stony iron meteorites. These are ones that are basically formed where the mantle and the core come together. So you have about 50% rock, 50% iron. Some of them, the rock is beautiful. It's a gem called peridot. If you have an August birthday, anybody here have an August? You have an August birthday, so yeah, that's your gemstone in this meteorite. But this one's my favorite because of its name. It landed in Chile in 1861. It's called Vaca Muerta. Anybody want to tell me what Vaca Muerta means in Spanish? Dead cow. It hit a cow and killed it when it hit, and so they named it the dead cow meteorite. And that's one of those terms that's so much better in Spanish than it is in English. You know, in English it's dead cow meteorite. In Spanish it's Vaca Muerta. So much better in Spanish. Go ahead and hit the next one. All right. So searching. This is. From the 1960s on, there have been a number of all-sky networks, and the first ones were really tough to operate because what they did is they set up a camera with a wide field of view and film, and had to replace the film every day. So you'd have to go out, process the film, go back, reset it, and hopefully you'd catch the streak of a meteor. And then about 10 years ago, digital technology moved forward enough that we could set up a camera and hook it up to a computer and get an image of the sky. And so this is from a network that I was a part of when I taught high school, where we set up cameras at about a dozen different schools around Colorado, and then we could triangulate and figure out where these things came down. Go ahead and hit the next one. All right, well, let's keep going. We'll keep going. Here we go. All right, Prairie Network, that was also through the Smithsonian. All right, there we go. That's too much information. There we go. All right. So this one's so cute. So here's one. This is from one of my cameras when I was teaching high school, and you can see this meteorite skipping through the atmosphere. This little bird really liked the mirror. It's basically a camera looking down on a curved mirror is what we're looking at there. So this is something that we did for many years through the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and we actually have a camera on top of Sunlight Peak now that watches for meteors. We caught one just last week during the Orionid shower. All right, go ahead. I should have included that picture, but it wasn't a very good picture. All right, cool. There is a NSF organization, National Science Foundation organization, called ANSMET, Antarctic Search for Meteorites, and they have been going down to Antarctica since 1976 to systematically collect meteorites. It was originally done by the Japanese, and it continues today. I got to go with this group in 2002, and we spent about 6 weeks camping on the ice and collecting meteorites. Go ahead and hit that. One more. And today it's run out of Cleveland, out of Case Western Reserve University. Ralph Harvey is the coordinator of it, and he basically puts together a meteorite search team every year and picks places to go and sends people down there. Go ahead and hit the next one. Antarctica is a great place to recover meteorites because the ice sheet itself acts like a conveyor belt. So meteorites land in Antarctica. They become part of the ice sheet. As the ice sheet moves, it gets stagnant. It runs up against an obstacle like a mountain range, and then the meteorites collect along the front of the mountains. And so what ANSMET does is they look at satellite photographs and look for areas of dense blue glacial ice. This is exposed ice that doesn't have any snow on it, and then they send a team every year to go recover them from there. All right. Cool. We'll go ahead and hit the next one. Northwest Africa is another source of a lot of meteorites these days. As the dunes migrate, Bedouin tribes go out and they recover these meteorites and then put them on eBay. It's just an amazing world we live in. But yeah, and there's kind of always been a little bit of an adversarial relationship between dealers and researchers. Neininger kind of he kind of broached that. What's the word I'm looking for? He bridged that gap. But there's always, kind of, some people want to just get them out on the market as fast as possible. Others want to study them. There's usually room for both. Usually what a dealer will do is if he gets a new meteorite, send a fragment to a meteoriticist, have them identify its type, and then he can sell the rest of it with the correct information. So that's usually what goes on. But laws vary depending on countries. If a meteorite lands in the United States on your property, it's your meteorite. If it lands on public land, it belongs to the Smithsonian. If you're in Canada, it belongs to the Canadian government. So it just kind of depends on where you are when it lands. So, all right, go ahead and hit the next one. So, why are they significant? I better wrap it up. Why are they significant? Go ahead and hit the next one. They're the best source of information of our solar system, and they tell us everything. They tell us the age of the solar system. They tell us about asteroids. There's some from Mars and the Moon. We talked a minute ago about carbon is trapped in these meteorites. Some of them even contain grains of dust that formed from the nebula from which our whole solar system formed. So it kind of tells us what was here before our solar system. So this is the first meteorite I found when I was in Antarctica. I mean, it wasn't big. It was like the size of a quarter. But I was very happy at that in that picture. So like, I found a meteorite. I'm so excited. And our team went on to find, we found a little over 600 as a group, and we had a sister team in another part of Antarctica. They found a little over 300 in their group that year. All right. Oh, no, they don't belong, when you go to Antarctica, they don't belong to us. They all go to the Smithsonian and wind up as a source for research. So, yep. All right. And we're saving questions after Marla's, right?
Yes, we were.
Okay.
Unless
Good.
anybody has one like that I just burst out, but I couldn't.
Oh, no. No, it's okay. All right.
All right.
Thank you. All right.
All right, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Marla Manchego, and I'm the single parent counselor here at Front Range, and I'm also a Pathways advisor. I just want to begin with just saying thank you to Gianna and your amazing team for putting these talks together. This is the second one I think I've been to, and it's just so cool to hear everybody's passion and what they're interested in. I myself was honored and humbled to have been asked to talk to you all today. I'm so blessed to get to do the work that I get to do every day, working with single parent students. I've been here at Front Range for 23 years, but it's only been in the last 7 years that it has become as meaningful and as purposeful as it has been. I started as the single parent counselor in 2010. And it has really changed my perspective and my passion for how I see students in general, but single parent students specifically. I'll tell you and anyone who will listen to me that I get to work with the best students here. I have amazing stories of students accomplishing great things, and they're not the traditional students right out of high school. For some of them, they've not been in school for a number of years, or even maybe they didn't graduate high school, they got a GED. They're not the top of their class, more likely than not. Sorry. Most of them start school wondering if they can be successful. They walk in the door not fully understanding if they're going to be able to be successful. And yet, the thing that makes them able to be successful as a student is that they don't see an alternative. They don't see anything other than higher education getting them out of the struggle that they're in. They've had a pile of stumbling blocks that they've been working through: financial obligations, housing, childcare, transportation, the rising cost of living in a place that people want to live in. Most of them go paycheck to paycheck, and they have this struggle. However often they get paid, and more often than not, they run out of days before they run out of, they run out of money before they run out of days to their next paycheck. They're in this cycle of figuring out one stumbling block, and then they run smack into another. Many actually feel like they've hit rock bottom. But do you know what rock bottom makes? A great foundation to build from. In my time working with single parent students, I found two qualities that seem to be present in those single parent students who are able to be successful. The first is they're able to just put their head down and work. They don't complain, they don't do all the drama stuff. They put their head down and they work. They don't have the bandwidth to do more than one task at a time, and so they do one task, and then the next task, and then the next task. These are the same students who at the end of their journey, they tell me, I don't know how I did that. I honestly have no idea how I got everything accomplished. But that's because they didn't stop. They just kept doing. And the second trait is a staunch stubbornness to never give up. Maybe they have something to prove to someone else or even to themselves. But more likely than not, they want to be that role model to their kids and show their kids that they can accomplish anything that they put their mind to, as long as they do it with tenacity and resilience. So now, having laid all this out about why I love doing what I do and what I see in successful single-parent college students. Let me turn the table a little here. Because we all know that no student can be successful in college without a community that supports and encourages them. Single-parent students must have a whole team of supporters. I wanted to have some real context to the importance of our college standing and supporting our single-parent students. So I looked at some pieces of research and quite honestly was a little astounded. So I looked at some research done by the Institute for Women's Policy Research. And this is from a 2011-12 study. And it found that over a quarter, 26% of all undergraduate students, or 4.8 million students, are raising dependent children. That number blew me away. 4.8 million students are parents. Women are disproportionately likely to be balancing college and parenthood, many without the support of a spouse or partner. Women make up 71% of all student parents. Roughly 2 million students, or 43% of the total student parent population, are single mothers. Single student fathers make up 11% of the student parent population. In a study from the same year, the Institute for Women's Policy Research found from an analysis of the national post-secondary student aid data that 3 in 10 single mothers in college attended private, for-profit schools. That's a larger share than students of any other family type. At for-profit institutions, single mothers account for 26% of the student body, yet they're only 11% of all undergraduate students. College students who are parents of dependent children are more likely than their counterparts without children to attend for-profit institutions, and single parents are more likely than married parents to attend a for-profit school. So you can deduce from these studies that the level of single-parent debt upon graduation is much higher than any other family type. So what is our responsibility as a college to these single-parent students? I believe we have to help them build a path to success. So for this analogy of building a path, I've brought some visual aids, and we're going to think about this path building like we're starting from scratch. So what's the first thing you need in any construction project? So this path is a construction project. What's the first thing you need? We've had enough construction projects that... Foundation? Even before that. A plan. You need to get a permit, right? And for a permit, you need a plan, you need some schematics, you need to know what the cost is going to be, you need to know who's involved, who's going to be affected by this. So this is our permit. In the scenario of Front Range, that permit is our onboarding process, right? So that's application, placement, financial aid application, removal of any kind of holds, new student orientation, meeting with their advisor, picking the first semester of classes. The next step in our process of building a path is the physical material, right? So you have to know that you are the equipment. A bulldozer, you need to make sure that you have a cleared way or cleared path, so you have to have the physical material. In the scenario of the college student, that could be finalizing the financial aid process, making sure that they have childcare and a way to pay for it, securing affordable housing and reliable transportation, all the things that are going to help a student really focus on school. And then the next part of our path building is the workers, right? So in the student example, the student is the main worker, right? This is the time management, balancing their priorities, making sure that they have the ability to focus on school. But this is also where we come in, right? Because as I said earlier, the student is not completely successful on their own. They need a strong support network to work alongside them as they move through this journey. We all do this in one way or another. Students, staff, faculty, we're all a part of the same journey. This might mean an instructor showing grace and flexibility when a student's been up all night with a sick child, or it might be an advisor having a tough conversation with a student about a realistic schedule so the student can better balance their time. It might mean working with the scholarship coordinator to find scholarships to apply for so they can spend less time working and more time studying and parenting. This is the place where we as a college have the biggest impact on this journey. So the student is going along the journey. The final step in the journey is reviewing the work, right? At the end of a construction project, you want to make sure that the path is safe, that there's not going to be any problems down the road. Is this path connected to something else? What is the next step? So these are the things like graduation evaluation, the next steps, like transferring or preparing to enter the workforce. Maybe the student needs to work with a career counselor to update their resume, review job-seeking strategies, talk to a faculty about potential connections in their career area, or talk to a transfer advisor. So this is the end of the student's journey here. What do we do at the end of a construction project?
Party.
Party! We have cake. So we have to have cake. We have to have the party. We celebrate. We cannot forget to celebrate our students' accomplishments. This is why graduation for me is like the best day of the year. I feel like a proud mama when I see my students walk across the stage. Because as much as I know that they worked to get there, I know that we all worked to get them there. There is nothing more meaningful to students than to hear from us about how proud we are of them. They did the work and we provided the support, so it's our accomplishment as much as it is theirs. So you see, the single parent student, with the help of all of us, has exactly everything that they need to move that pile of blocks and to build a path to success. In fact, I believe it is our responsibility to help them build their path to success. Because we know if they aren't coming to us for help in their journey, they'll find it another way. They'll build their path, and unfortunately for them, it'll cost them a whole lot more and perhaps be a whole lot less meaningful. Thanks.
I think we could never underestimate how intimidating you people are. This is hard. You stand it right? That's what I'm saying. So I love, and that's my encouragement for you all. Come do this. But this is a really special time. So thank you both for sharing what matters to you and what's here. So we just want to open this up now. If you have questions or thoughts that you want to share, or a connection point that you would like to make.
I was wondering what originally inspired you to go into astronomy and study meteors.
Star Trek. I really love Star Trek. And no, I had but what really got me into meteorites was a geology TA, and I was taking historical geology, and he brought in, a few samples. I'd never seen a meteorite before. He brought these in, and he handed them to us, and he said, "That's the oldest rock you're ever going to hold." and it's from space. And I don't know, just something about that just electrified me. I was just like, oh my goodness, that's so different. I mean, I love geology and rocks and everything, but these are just all totally different. And so that kind of got me thinking about it. I took some more classes and read every book I could on meteorites and yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Marla, what is the percentage of fingerprints on campus?
The last numbers I had was about 15% at this campus, but that came from the application for admission, and it's a self-report. So do you consider yourself a single parent? Anecdotally, I know that I get a lot of single parent students after they've already begun taking classes and go through divorce while they're in class. And so that, I don't know how accurately we can come up with, but about 15% is.
Do you have a sense of how many are affected during the semester and they have to drop or anything, or are we doing okay?
Honestly, it depends on how well that they've prepared beforehand. I don't know that there's any way to really pull that as a whole body, but what I work to help students do is lay that foundation and get prepared even before they step in the doors, because if they don't have the financial resources they need, unfortunately, they're going to take everything from loan rather than scholarships and other means to be able to support themselves and their kids. And so the goal is to try and do that upfront work so that it makes the school part easier.
Well, I always wondered about meteorites when I see them going through the sky, that you're losing a lot of the mass as it's going through the atmosphere. Is that just, does that vary randomly, or do we know, or is it pretty consistent? A meteor will lose a certain this percentage of mass as it goes through the atmosphere before it comes.
Right. It depends on the composition. The Stonies are going to lose a lot more mass than the irons, and so the Stony Meteorites, you'll lose probably 90% of it before it hits the ground. And so this one started out a lot bigger before it came through our atmosphere. The other thing that happens is when they do when they come into the atmosphere, rarely do they make it all the way to the ground. They usually build up so much pressure and heat that they explode anywhere from 10 to 20 miles above the surface, and so then little fragments rain out. And that's why we find so many little ones left over from something like that. But the irons are just, much stronger, of course, coming through the atmosphere. So they have a greater tendency to punch through the atmosphere and hit the ground whole. And then sometimes they release that energy that way by fracturing, or sometimes they don't. They just land with a thud. There was a fall in Johnstown in 1926. It was at the Caldwell Cemetery, and there was a funeral taking place, and this meteorite came through the atmosphere. It exploded. Pieces landed all around the cemetery. They already had shovels, so they just went out and started digging up fragments of the meteorite. So every once in a while, something like that happens.
Wow.
Yeah, good local meteorite story.
I want to see like a shooting star.
Yeah.
It could be something as small as what you're holding there.
It's probably smaller. If you go out any given night and you see the streak of light in the sky, it's a sand-sized grain that's going across the sky. And these things are traveling anywhere between 25,000 and 40,000 miles an hour. And they hit the friction of our atmosphere, and in just a moment, they get as almost as bright as a piece of the sun, coming through the atmosphere. So they're heating up and they're releasing a lot of energy just very, very quickly. So so they're tiny. One this big would make a really good streak across the sky.
You're just making us the coolest parents ever.
So is the light that appears to our eye proportional to the size?
It is, and the and how far down in the atmosphere it gets. So what they really distinguish are meteors would be just the streak, and then fireballs are the big ones, and those are much rarer. They don't happen very often, but every once in a while one comes way down and explodes, and then you go out and look for fragments from that. Yeah.
Do any of the other planets have an atmosphere that does that same thing?
Yes, and so Mars has meteorites all over the surface is one of those surprises from the rovers we've sent there. They're constantly sending back pictures where you can see a meteorite just sitting out on the surface. So the Martians haven't picked them up for some reason. And then Venus has a very thick atmosphere, so it takes a much larger meteorite to make it through the Venusian atmosphere. Something like this would probably burn up. It's about 90
So they
times.
can't get through the minutia?
No. You had to schedule. Oh boy. Oh, good. Cool.
Marla, what about the magic wand question? If you could make us all leave here and do one thing for your students, what would it be?
Just be an advocate. I think being available to listen when a student needs to listen. Most of the times, single parent students have all the answers they need, but they just need to have the assurance and the validation that they are able to be successful. The flexibility, and I struggle with this one because single parent students want to be treated like every other student, and yet we know that when you've been up all night with a sick kid, or your kid's in the hospital, or things happen, your child care provider just flopped on you. There's all sorts of things that do actually happen that is hard for students to then come back from. So the encouragement to be like, just get back and do what you need to do. So I guess that would be my magic wand.
Are we the only campus that has your services?
Yes,
Are we looking at expanding that to other campuses?
not at this time.
I mean, you can't
We-
split your personnel.
We actually, we are so fortunate because the single parent program kind of came over with the ship. It was, I've been here 23 years and the single parent program precedes me. So we have had a single parent program here for probably as long as we've been Front Range Community College. And it has moved from a pretty part-time position, then a three-quarter time position to then a full-time position. But it's part of the fabric of this campus, and so we are very, very fortunate that it's been just a part of who we are. And unfortunately, we don't have that at the other campuses. And it's harder to get something started than to keep something going.
How do students find out about your services program?
Referral mostly. It's on the website if they go to the Larimer Campus Advising, but referral mostly through advisors, through other people on campus. I have lots of folks in the community that refer students to me, so mostly through referral.
All right.
Well, thank you all. As Jean said, our next What Matters to Me is November 30th. President Dorsey had a topic to be determined, and Ray Aberley will be joining us. So please come on back, and please help me thank Anthony one more time for making sure we have treats.